So what is Zionism? Hi, I'm Paul Nabil, Syrian American, and this is my series Start Here. The definition of Zionism is a thread to pull on. A very common pattern I see in my comments is define Zionism. And the person says, well, it's the belief that a Jewish state should exist, which is true, and then the gotcha being, well, due to previous persecution, especially the Holocaust, Jews need a state to be safe, and if you don't believe in the legitimacy or right of that state to exist, you don't believe in Jewish safety and are therefore anti-Semitic. So first of all, states don't have rights. At best, they have sovereign rights, which extend only from the individual rights of its inhabitants. So a country can't use states' rights as an excuse to oppress its own people. But let's pull on that thread of the basic definition, a belief that a Jewish state should exist. Judaism is an ethno-religion. It is both an ethnicity and a religion, which means Zionism is a call for the creation of a theocratic ethnostate. And as my friend Sim Kern says,
they're hanging on to this premise that Jews need their own theocratic ethnostate. No one gets a theocratic ethnostate. We live in a diverse, heterogeneous world where human beings have been moving across it all over the place for many, many tens of thousands of years. And I get why you think this, because we are fed this from birth and ritually reminded of it every year as part of our religion, that we have suffered so much and that we need a homeland. But it's just ahistorical to think that Jews have suffered in some unique and special way that makes them entitled to a theocratic ethnostate.
Exactly. No one gets a theocratic ethnostate. Ethnostates are bad, actually, and tend to make no one safer because they require the domination of all other ethnicities and religions in the region to ensure that theirs is the most favored one, which is considered almost universally to be a terrible approach to making peace. Pulling the thread further, so you've decided to make your ethnostate. Where? Early Zionists, including founder Theodor Herzl, were largely atheists and considered themselves more of a pragmatic political movement who referred to themselves as colonizers. They actually considered several locations outside of Palestine for their Jewish state, including British East Africa and Argentina. But their movement actually got a lot of pushback from within the Jewish community, particularly among Jewish leftists and anarchists who had no interest in nationalism, colonialism, or state building. But over a slow process that took decades, the Zionist movement got better at conflating their political movement with an ancient religious yearning for Zion that enabled them to recruit more people from the Jewish community, including militant extremists. And due mostly to that religious association, the Zionist movement became synonymous with establishing a Jewish state in Palestine. And that this process would not be a peaceful one, because it was a conquest of a nation. All of which is to say the true definition of Zionism is the call to establish a Jewish theocratic ethnostate in Palestine. The response to this is generally going to be one of three very standard colonizer excuses. The first one being appeals to religion, which we'll get into later. The second one being terra nullius, the myth that nobody was living there in the first place, encapsulated by the Zionist slogan, the land without a people for a people without a land. And finally, manifest destiny, which are various claims that Palestinians were just so backwards or so miserable or their lands were so barren or disease-ridden that Europeans basically did them a favor by colonizing them. All of this is unjustifiable, indefensible nonsense, but if you provide any proof or sources refuting those claims, the Zionists will then respond, well, that is coming from people who are inherently anti-Semitic. And that is the reason that the indigenous Palestinians are so invested in lying about their own heritage or where they're from or where their houses are or what they care about, and why they're so willing to suffer so much indignity and violence and harm and pain simply because it's worth it to them because they hate Jews just so much. Which of course completely ignores the fact that there were Palestinian Jewish people in Palestine who in no way supported Zionism for the majority of time, if ever. But that conversation's for another day. Next up, a historical overview.